Here comes Bunny, wheels around, gathers the football. He's kicked the vertical.
Kakoe launches from 50.
Came out to Wait. Wait said wait. Got it up to May.
Do a push-up with him on top of you, Jakey.
How did he do that?
Flies, pies, win the close one. Collingwood are premiers in 2023.
Was doing that. Why didn't he blow time on?
Well, that's the thing. Heard it kick the ball, then he's brought the hand up for time on.
Hello, everybody, and welcome back to the Time On podcast. Hello, if you're listening on Spotify, Apple Podcasts, or on the Time On YouTube page. Yes, Time On is now in video. I'm your co-host, as always, Mr. Darcy Slam Duncan, and as always, I'm joined by my great friend, Mr. Nicholas Crickis. How are you today, Nick?
Pleasure to be here. Hey, we got a bit of a spring in our step because this morning, the results overnight in our other beloved code, Liverpool,
That is
champions.
correct. That is correct.
EFL champions.
Liverpool won the EFL Cup this morning with their under-12 side, which is a stunning achievement because they beat a billion-dollar Chelsea team, which are now known as the biggest bottlers and cows in the business.
The billion-dollar bottle jobs. I think
Billion-dollar bottle jobs. I think that's a nice bit of alliteration there, Nick. I think a bit of happiness for me because Essendon, my other teams sometimes don't perform so well, but Liverpool is the only team we share together. And
That's right.
Give us a lot of joy in our lives. You can see watching on YouTube, we've got the Liverpool Anfield Road side behind us and the Liverpool scarves. We're going to cut out the Collingwood part of the section of our backdrop here. Absolutely, Nick, because this is a Liverpool-only podcast.
This is a winning podcast.
This isn't about footy anymore, is it?
It's a winning podcast where we will mention the Pies. Must I remind you every single episode I walk in here, I'm a reigning champion.
The whole room reminds me, actually, because it's all pies everywhere. Did you catch the game this morning with Liverpool?
No, I woke up at halftime thinking beIN Sports was actually streamed on Foxtel now. I think they've split. I can't do it. It was 4 a.m. I was cross-eyed. I'm like, I'm not going to download beIN Sports for a free trial.
You woke up at 3 a.m. to watch the game.
Correct.
Yeah, well, I actually bought beIN Sports and the free trial. It cost you $1, by the way. It's not a free trial. And I watched the first 100 minutes of the game. And I'm like, 0-0. This is just it's a terrible, terrible game. We can't put away our chances. The umpiring, by the way, or refereeing, it was terrible. Some of the worst officiating you'll ever see. And I thought, it's 0-0. I'm going to cark it here. What happens 10 minutes later? Virgil van Dijk scores the winning goal.
There's the delivery. Van Dijk! Yes! It's absolutely amazing! Legend is written for Virgil van Dijk and these Liverpool teenage sensations.
It's a recurrent theme with me. We're both asleep when Liverpool have their biggest moments. Sometimes we need to actually be asleep to have the greatest moments in sport, Nick.
That's right. You just got to let it cook.
Now, it was a great achievement from Liverpool this morning. But moving on to footy news, Nick, what else has sprung in the last couple of days? Because we did a show on Thursday night, out on Friday. But has there been any other big footy stories with that little taster we gave?
Not really, but what I think is important is starting tomorrow night, or starting Tuesday night, going for the next 7 or 8 days, there'll be footy on every single night. So all the practice games, there'll be a few held at Icon Park. I will be in attendance, of course, 6:40. We've got Richmond first.
Have you got
up.
the colour palette ready for your face paint?
Yeah, of course. I got the lanyard ready, the membership packs. You know what's funny? They've actually got the sports bet odds up for these preseason games. It's pretty humorous.
What is the point of that?
Nothing.
Like, who is actually trying these games? That's what I don't understand. Because if you try, you consider to try hard. And if you lose, well, your whole season's in tatters, similar to Essendon against St Kilda.
Preseason is all about getting touch and I guess implementing what you've learnt over the last 3 months of training.
Because we saw with the North Melbourne Collingwood game, you had scenario training as well. I didn't catch what the idea behind that was. Is like, say you're down 10 points with 2 minutes left, this is what you do. Now, Collingwood are the best in the business at that. So is that what you're trying to try out against North?
Yeah, exactly.
Because they ended up beating you in those scenarios.
Did they? I thought it was for 1 point.
I'm pretty sure they won every quarter and every scenario.
It's irrelevant. That whole game was irrelevant, except for North fans. Don't ask them.
Well, as you mentioned, there's games coming up, the preseason games. Also, tickets are on sale tomorrow for the AFL Premiership season for 2024. Nick, are you locked and ready to get your seats?
I am, yes. I've set a few calendar reminders in my calendar, and also got a few siblings as well that I can sort of share the load with just in case something pops up at work.
In case you actually have to do some work for once. Like, actually, I do a podcast part-time and try to get tickets in the middle of my workday.
Oh, nothing got in the way of me getting finals tickets last year, I'll tell you that. I blocked out my calendar. I'm like, everyone just give me half an hour.
I actually have grand final seats, part of my Essendon membership. I'll probably never have to use them, but it's a good addition.
That's how they lull you and suck you in.
I was looking at it before. Essendon have played 2 finals in Victoria since 2005. And you played 3 last year. That is how hard it is to be a Bombers fan.
One of them was 2014.
2014, we were up by, I think, 39 points and lost to North Melbourne. Don't know why I'm doing that. Also, in 2011, we lost by, I think, 70 points to the Carlton Football Club. Those are our only 2 finals at the MCG since 2004 when we beat Melbourne by, I think, 5 points.
Wow. So one a humiliating loss and one just a soul-crushing loss.
Yes, it's a crushing losses to 2 of our biggest rivals that it's like to be an Essendon fan. Hopefully, I need those grand final seats sometime in the near future. Nick, what do we have on today's show? We've done the intro, but we have a big, jam-packed episode today.
Oh, there is so much to get through. So we're going to give a preview into every single club, all 18.
All 18, team by team.
We're going to refine it. It's not going to be full in-depth, but basically just to summarise, just highlighting key ins and outs, who the acquisitions were over the summer, whether we think they're going to go down this year around the same mark or improve. So pretty simple and, throw in a few other...
Bit of up, down, a few snakes and ladders.
Yeah, a few snakes and ladders.
Well, looking forward to doing that, Nick. Any other big news, or should we get stuck into it?
T-Swift.
T-Swift, she just left town, I think. She was in Sydney this past weekend, but she was in Melbourne the previous weekend. And she absolutely ripped up the MCG turf. Did they not realise it is footy season? They don't have time for some stage show or rock concert.
Oh, this ground's an absolute carcass right now, so it's it's under some serious work.
Do we need the tip rat to clean it up?
At the back. Tip. Look at him. Get around him.
I heard some anecdotes from a few very passionate Collingwood supporters as well. She went to the concert and she goes, I've never actually heard the MCG that loud. And she's like, I know, I'm a massive Collingwood supporter. I was at the prelim final against GWS and the Granny. I'm telling you, 96,000 people screaming Taylor Swift was the loudest she's ever heard it. And, I actually believe it.
Well, it's probably the decibels would be such a high register for T-Swift, especially when you belong with me hits. I mean, that's going to go to a whole different level. But we've been to some pretty loud MCG games. Last year's semi-final, Blues D's. I didn't think I've ever seen the arena shake like that. Yeah. You could feel the atmosphere through your legs.
No, it was electric.
And then you weren't there that day, but Carlton, Collingwood, obviously that famous Jamie Elliott, Sila, you were on the beaches of Mykonos. But that was one of the best atmospheres I've ever heard of the MCG.
Zerchi Beach, thank you. Going off my nut.
How many frappes in hand? Were you a frappes akimbo?
That EVV was awakened by me and Jono. I'm going to have to play that audio later at some point during the podcast. You know the one I'm talking about.
I know exactly what you're talking about.
Too many bleeps.
There'll be a long night editing if I have to put in that audio, Nick. Okay, that is all the big news we're going to assess on this week's show. Let's get stuck into it. All 18 teams, we're going to break them down side by side. Who is in, who is out, the big moves they've made, and what we think they'll achieve in this season. Nick, I'll kick things off. It is the Adelaide Football Club. Now, the big moves they made. Well, firstly, I'll get their record. So last year, they came 9th. We all know they should have played finals. They finished 11 and 12, should have been 12 and 11.
Robbed right in front of me.
They were robbed right in front of all of us. Ben Keys did kick a goal, but they didn't review it on the goal system review. Now, Nick, the big additions, well, there's not many, to be honest with you. They got Dan Curtin in the draft, who could be a generational prospect from Western Australia. They got Chris Burgess from Gold Coast.
Bit of handy depth down back.
Bit of handy depth. I mean, did he play? I remember him playing up forward. I think he can play both ends of the ground.
That's right.
He used to play for the Gold Coast Suns. He could be a handy depth addition. There's a couple of big outs, though. They lost Tom Dudu. Don't know how to pronounce it still to this day, but he was a really, really good key defender and also interceptor for the Adelaide Football Club. And, of course, they lost Shane McAdam to Melbourne. Nick, big question. Where do you see the Adelaide Crows finishing in 2024? They just missed the finals last year. They have such a strong forward line, so many good midfielders, but do we see them going up or down?
It's a hard one. I don't think they're going to produce as good a year as what everyone's thinking this season because, look, a lot of their forward line really heavily relied on Tex. You know, the brilliance of Tex Walker producing, 50-plus goals and just playing out of his skin as on the mid-30s right now. So I don't know if he's going to be able to produce yet another season like that. And big question marks on their back line. I mean, their defense has always been that sticking point, whether they can really hold down the big gorilla forwards. Nick Murray, Jordan Butts, are they sort of up to it yet? I don't know. They're still pretty raw. I think they're going to be around the same mark between that sort of 7 to 10 bracket.
I agree. They're going to be in that 7 to 10 bracket. I'm glad you mentioned the likes of Nick Murray and Jordan Butts and Max Michelini. They don't have the big names in the defense, and that's probably the big question mark. Because, last year, Adelaide, number 1 offense. They were one of the best watchers in the league. Got Rankin, Walker, Fogarty, Riley Thilthorpe. They had a lot of good forwards, produced a lot of points, but can they defend it the other way?
Just on that note, I really want to see a lot more from Riley Thilthorpe this year because
Absolutely.
pick one, he's entering, I think it's his 4th or 5th season now. Like we understand that big forwards and ruckmen, they take a lot of time to develop. But the thing is, Adelaide need to make a call. What's he going to play? Is he a forward ruck? Is he a permanent ruck? You can't play ruck in the same team as their star ruckman right now, who's
Riley O'Brien, local boy.
You cannot override Rob. So he's the number 1 ruckman. Riley Thilthorpe has to be their focal point, that dominating key forward. Why they draft him?
I think there has to be a point where you get Tex Walker and hands over the keys to the likes of Riley Thilthorpe. Now, it's a hard one because Tex has produced his late career renaissance where he's playing the best football of probably his whole career, kicking 50-plus goals.
Brereton said he was minutes away from
He
retiring.
did say that. I think, during that COVID period, Tex looked cooked. He was absolutely finished, and he's put together 2.5 magnificent years. He had a little suspension in between them, I'm not going to talk about right now. But yes, he's had some great football, but it will come a time where Darcy Fogarty and Riley Thilthorpe must step up. But it's not really a question mark. It's can the defense hold up? I think I've got them finishing around that 7th to 10th bracket. They're a contender to make the finals, but they're no lock by any means.
I agree. All right, let's move on to the next one. So we've got the Brisbane Lions, reigning grand finalists. I mean, look, this is probably an obvious one. They're going to be an absolute force. That home ground advantage of the Gabba, it's like no other. Like, they will probably not lose a game there again this year.
They put teams to the slaughter at the Gabba try. They're pretty much impossible to beat there. I mean, Collingwood played there, and they got pretty easily handled early in the year.
Right. Let's look at their addition. So probably not too many noticeable ones, but Tom Doty, he's coming off that knee injury, but he's going to shore up that defence just a little bit more. And look at the outs. Look, Marcus Adams was forced to retire. Jack Gunson demanded a trade. I mean, look, there's probably no loss there because he didn't really impact their list this season. So nothing too noticeable, but they've got another key back down there to hold on. So look, at the scheme of things, I think they're definitely going to compete. I think their home ground advantage, that's an easy 10, 11 wins minimum. They're going to be featuring in the top 2, honestly, this year.
I tend to agree with you, Nick. I mean, they came second in the home and away ladder last year. They won probably 15 to 16 games, undefeated at home. Question mark still is winning on the MCG. I mean, they lost to Hawthorn there, lost to Collingwood there.
Oh, so close, though.
Can they actually win on the G? I think, what's their records? They lost 13 in the last 14, something like that. The only win was against the Ds in that final. Now, I'm not too worried about the G. It's just more that how many times can he stay up and not win? Because the whole Fagan, Lockie Neal era, I call it the Lockie Neal era because when he came to that club, he changed their fortunes.
And relevant.
Can they stay up for another, 5th or 6th year in premiership contention? It does take a toll after time, but they've got young players coming in which are very good. Jasper Fletcher, Will Ashcroft will be back halfway through the year. Kitty Coleman, who set the MCG alight in the grand final. They have good young players coming through. I think they'll contend, but how long can you stay up for? That's my big question.
One name I want to mention, Cam Rayner. Where's he going to play his best footy? We hear it every year. It's forward, mid, then it's half back.
Have you seen the reports?
No, he has to be playing permanent midfield.
Agree.
And if he's not, if his tank's not up to it, then I'm sorry, he's just never going to be an A-grader. That's simple. He's
going to be a half forward that lairizes around. It probably doesn't dominate games. Has a couple of good games against lower clubs, but I similarly see him on a sort of like a Dusty Martin, Petrarca Degoe path. You're good forwards, you can kick goals, you can impact players one-on-one, but can you go in the guts and change games? We've yet to see that with Cam Rayner.
No. Look, where do you have him finishing? I've got him top 4 for me.
Top 4 for me as well. I think they'll play in a preliminary final. I don't know if they're going to be good enough yet to beat Collingwood. We'll move on. The next team, it is the Carlton Football Club. They finished 13-9 last year. They were 5th in the home and away ladder. Unfortunately, lost a preliminary final to the Brisbane Lions. Big ins and outs. Well, nothing really to mention. They added Orazio Fantasia as a delisted free agent from the Port Adelaide Football Club. They also added Elijah Hollands to partner with his brother Oliver on another wing for the Carlton Football Club. Nick, I don't know where to put Carlton this year because they've been so promising for so long and they finally put it together last year to make a preliminary final after not playing finals for 10 years. But can they go better than that? Can they play in a grand final? Can they even compete in the second half for a preliminary final? Because in that Brisbane game, they were very good in the first quarter, but those last 3 quarters were they're unlike the previous 10 weeks of the Carlton Football Club. They didn't really compete all over the ground. Where do you have them placed?
I've got them improving this year because look at their home and away. So they finished 5th, had a horrible start, and made a really late race to the finals. But I've got them improving. I think they're going to be capable of a top 4 finish. Now, that hinges on two things. It's Harry Mackay finding his best form and really working a really destructive
Often a
partnership.
forgotten man in all this, because
Yes.
Harry hasn't been himself for a couple of years now, but he can be such a destructive force if his head's right.
Well, how many clubs have two genuine key gun fullbacks? They don't.
For forwards.
No, as in backs to match up on
absolutely.
them.
Sorry about
Yeah.
that. I mean, you got Melbourne. It's just not that many. I mean, no, there really isn't too many elite defenders.
So they could really tear it up. You know, maybe not in the same fashion as Tomahawk and Jezza, but they can literally terrorise defences. So it hinges on that. And also Jacob Wiedering. He's their most important player. So if he can stay fit and continue to, be the glue down back, then I see them winning more home and away games, getting themselves the opportunity for a double chance. And yes, they won 2 finals, so that's amazing. I think the pass mark is to get a top 4 finish this year.
I'm glad you mentioned Jacob Wiedering. So the reports recently today, I think he will miss at least the first 2 rounds. It was a bad calf injury he sustained. So he tore his calf. I think it was considered an 8 to 10 week injury. He had an indifferent start to last year, but when he really got going, he was the best defender in the league over the last 3 months of the season. Won Carlton's BNF. Do you think Carlton need to get off to a good start is the thing? Because you've got them in the top 4. Sam Walsh also has an injury cloud. Zach Williams hasn't played for a year. I think they need all their players playing well, or at least their top line players, in order to start the season well and get to that top 4 echelon. But if they're starting slow like last year, then they'll really struggle to come in the top 4.
They do, but the thing that's on their side though is the confidence and belief. Like they went through that lull and they made the run, and they also won 2 finals. Like that's no easy feat. So I think the fact that they've won 2 finals, the belief in the game plan and structures there, and the belief in just winning. So I think, yes, those mid to lower tiers, that bottom 6 bracket of Carlton's list, are now confident and have the belief to go, we can probably go a bit better this year.
Okay, I think you're absolutely spot on, because those bottom 6s, they really played well in the back half of last year. I'm thinking of Fogarty types, even Hollands, who was a first-year draftee. They're able to elevate the list and play well in the big games. So I'm on board with you with Carlton. I think they're going to be very, very close this year. Nick, next team moving on. I'll let you introduce them. There's some average team that actually won the flag last year.
They are the reigning premiership winners. Equal top now, 16. Thank you very much. Look,
We're counting Baffa flags now, I see.
Looking at the additions, we've added Lockie Schultz. Yes, that's we. From Fremantle, that's pretty handy. I mean, that's 40 goals plus a season, coming straight into that forward line. Notable absentees, you'd say Taylor Adams going to Sydney, Jack Ginnivan traded to Hawthorn. To be honest, probably not a whole lot lost there. Taylor Adams was going to get phased out if he wasn't already last season, so that's no real loss. Gets the other guys coming up into the team. Jack Ginnivan, we obviously know about his character on that, but Lockie Schultz, I think that's an upgrade.
Absolutely. I think Lockie Schultz he steps into the Adams role? Is it more of the Ginnivan role?
More of the Ginnivan role, but it's more the likes of the younger midfielders. So I think Finn McRae will get a chance, Reef McInnes, and maybe even Bo McCreary gets a chance in the midfield. So
I'm glad you mentioned Bo McCreary, because I think, was it Nathan Buckley or David King? David King mentioned that he thinks he could be a top-line midfielder in a couple of years' time.
I don't know if he has the tank yet,
yes,
or the football now. But I think people can sort of get carried away. I think it's very hard to go from like a half forward or a half back into midfield. The game's played so differently, especially from half back when the game's in front of you. Because I remember there were calls about, Isaac Quainer, getting him into the midfield. I think we trialled it, just didn't quite work. So it is a much more different game.
Yes. Well, I think it's based on the fact that Bo is such a strong player.
Strongest in our club.
He'll be a great contested player as well. But it's a lot harder when you've got about 6 or 7 people surrounding you to find that same space. Because when Bo's out on the flank and he's one-on-one, he's going to win pretty much every single time. I think he's going to be a really, really good player for Collingwood. Talk about the other superstars on your list. Nick Dacos, Josh Dacos, Darcy Moore. Do you think they'll perform at a similar level in 2024?
I think so. I think we've got the hunger there, and we're so well disciplined and well coached. So I see us around the same mark, in that top 4 bracket, competing again to hopefully land, a final or qualifying final like the G. One thing I want to make note of, though, this is such an important year for us because we've got a lot of players in their 30-something. They've probably got 2 more years left. So it's really key we get it's really key that we get games into these young players like Finn McRae, Ash Johnson, I could say even
Reef McInnes,
just to make sure they're sort of somewhat, hardened at AFL level. Harvey Harrison, these guys, Ed Allen, Jacob Ryan, these guys haven't really played a lot of footy, but they were widely touted as juniors.
Well, I noticed that the last couple of years, especially since Flyers come in, you haven't blooded as many youngsters. You've had more of a core group of maybe 26 players that this is your team. There's a couple of injuries. They're a bit malleable. They can put people in different spots, but we don't try to rely on the younger VFL players. You think this is more of a blooding year? We are going to bring new players through.
I think so. There has to be like a systematic approach. Just give them exposure to AFL because, the likes of Titch, Scott Pendlebury, Sidey, they ain't going to last forever. So when these guys go, we need the next crop to step up and understand what's required of them.
Similar to the Kansas City Chiefs in that they've got Patrick Mahomes and they had a lot of older players or superstars like Tyreek Hill move on, but they kept building younger players around him. They filled the right list needs. I see Nick Dacos is the Patrick Mahomes of the AFL. Interested to see what he does this year. Brownlow Ferret, $5. He's half the price of Marcus Bonampelli. He is the face of the league coming forward. Nick, we're going to move on to a team that is very close to my heart. It is the Essendon Football Club. Now, they came 11th in 2023 with an 11-12 record. There's been some big additions. We had Xavier Dersma trade in from Port Adelaide. Todd Goldstein was picked up as a free agent from North Melbourne, and Jade Gresham was also picked up as a free agent. And the biggest one was Ben Mackay as a free agent from the North Melbourne Football Club. A couple of big outs. Cult figure Anthony McDonald, Tip and Woody retired for a second time, as well as Andrew Phillips retiring and Brandon Zerk-Thatcher leaving to join the Port Adelaide Football Club. Nick, I feel Essendon has addressed the big list needs on their list with fullback, small forward, and another wingman, and a ruckman in addition to that. But I don't know if they can go to another level just yet. I feel like they're stuck in that 6 to 12 range, maybe even lower, because their list doesn't have as many elite players as the top list in this league.
Yeah, I think taking a step back, though, you have definitely improved your list. Like, if you're on a needs basis, you needed a key fullback, someone that can take that gorilla, taller, larger forward. So you got Ben Mackay. Yeah, paid overs, whatever. You got to do it. That's just this day and age. So I think you definitely improved your list just in that single move.
Absolutely.
Now, does it elevate you to that next bracket? Look, personally, no. I think you're going to be sort of around the same mark, and it's going to be that 8 to 13 mark. I don't know if you're going to improve, at the same velocity of those other clubs.
It's called footballing purgatory, Nick.
Yes,
because
that's right.
Essendon very, very rarely have a top 3 pick, or at least when they get access to those top picks, they're not getting an Aaron Cadman or a Sam Darcy or a Nick Dacos. They're not getting generational players. Not that Aaron Cadman or Sam Darcy are necessarily generational, but these big key forwards, ruckman. Essendon getting Andrew McGrath types, Elijah Sarsis types. Somehow they need to get in someone like Ben King, who's re-signed recently, to elevate their list. I feel like these players are good players, but this doesn't necessarily take us to being contenders for a home final.
Tell me about Archie Perkins. He could be the one. I really like Archie, but I need to see, Essendon fans want to see him do it every week.
I personally haven't seen it yet. I think he could be similar to a Paul Chapman type. He's someone that can go into centre bounces, they can kick goals, but he hasn't done it consistently over the course of a whole season yet. That's what the bit's frustrating with Essendon, because we had 3 picks in the top 10 in 2020.
What are teasers?
Nick Cox, Archie Perkins, Zach Reid. Now, Zach Reid is finally healthy. He probably will line up at fullback or centre half back this season, but there's a lot of moving pieces still in Essendon, a lot of young players who still need time to grow, which is why I have Essendon just missing the 8.
And it's sad because you just need more patience. But try telling an Essendon fan that in the last 20 years.
As I said at the start of the show, we've played 2 finals in Melbourne in 20 years, and we were embarrassed in both of them.
All right, next one, we are heading over to the west.
Oh, yes.
We got Fremantle. Pretty disappointing season last year, let's be honest. So we're coming from 14th, 97% percentage. Couldn't buy a goal, really. And let's look at their list changes. So really, didn't really recruit anyone to come into that side. What they lost, Liam Henry traded to St Kilda.
Former top 10 pick.
Yeah, there you go. And Lockie Schultz traded to Collingwood. So they've lost 35 to 40 goals in an already struggling forward line this year. Look, one thing to note, Freo, how many games did they lose last year?
Last year at home, Nick, they lost 7 at Optus Stadium. They couldn't buy a win there. And this is a team I thought had a home ground advantage at Optus Stadium this year, and they were very good the year beforehand.
12 months before, it was a fortress for them, and then they go and lose, 7 out of 11 last year. That's really poor.
I mean, their wins were against West Coast.
You can't play West Coast every week.
Exactly.
Yeah, I think I have them probably around the same mark. Look, are they capable of a top 8 finish? Big question marks on the forward line. You've got Sean Darcy and you've got Luke Jackson, 2 genuine A-grade ruckmen in the same team. It just doesn't work.
Now, those players are fantastic players, but you're robbing Peter to pay Paul. It doesn't make a lot of sense to get Luke Jackson in and then Sean Darcy, was it a 7-year deal in the end?
Something ridiculous.
I just don't understand it. We know how good their midfield is. Brayshaw, Sarong, the corpse of Nat 5, hopefully this year, in addition to Luke Jackson and Sean Darcy.
Yeah, bring that song again.
But that song's coming back at the moment. He's both our Supercoach sides. But I don't understand how they're going to get better outside that midfield, because that midfield is star-studded, but the defence, it's shaky, and the forward line's even worse.
Yeah, the forward line is genuinely starving of goals. So, yeah, I think they missed the 8 this year. I've got them in the 9th to 12th bracket.
Yeah, I agree. I think in that 9th to 12th bracket came 14th last year. I've seen them coming about 12th to 14th this year. Nick, we'll move on to the GWS Giants. They came 7th in the home and away ladder last season, went 13-10, and had a great back end of the season. Now, there's no notable ins or outs to mention really here, Nick. They Phil Davis retired. I don't think he even played last year.
I thought he would have retired the year before.
I think he did retire. I think it was purely for salary cap purposes. Matt Flynn left as a free agent and is torn his hamstring tendon. We'll get stuck into that a bit later with the West Coast. But no one really big in or out for the Giants. But it must be said, they had a very settled back six, an explosive midfield, and their forward line, well, it hummed with Jesse Hogan and Toby Green last year. There's no real big additions I feel they needed.
No, that's right. But it just sort of clicked and worked for them. They had their backline settled once Sam Taylor returned to that team. And then you just saw instantly, they were transformed when he started playing. He was a star. And then Toby Green had probably a career best year yet again. And then the likes of like Connor Iden, in finals, he just had this breakout finals patch.
He was fantastic in all the finals, especially even the Collingwood final. These players at the Giants, your Connor Iden types, it's the guys whose names I can't remember right now. Those are the guys that show up at the big games. As we're looking at their list right now, Jack Buckley. I love Jack Buckley. He's one of their second key defenders. Lockie Ash.
What about Kieran Briggs? The emergence.
Can I talk about Kieran Briggs for a minute? Sorry. So you had Shane Mumford, who was a great combative, tackling, really a bastard of a player. And now you've got his successor in Kieran Briggs, the man he is taught.
He's reincarnated.
He lumps along the ground. He's not explosive, but contest to contest, he will belch you up. He's a good tap ruckman, and he's not afraid to get his hands dirty either.
They've got a lot of players that just love the contest and love to get their hands dirty while also possessing the absolute silk, the cream of the crops.
Talk about the silk to me, Nick.
Yeah, Lockie Whitfield, you got Josh Kelly, you got
Stephen Coniglio. I mean, last year, Tom Green and Stephen Coniglio were the best possession winners in the entire comp. And we don't talk about those guys. I only talk about Tom Green, but Stephen Coniglio had a brilliant bounce-back season under my man Bicep Kingsley.
And that's what I'm so bullish about. So I have them improving this year. I think they're going to improve, finishing 7th on the ladder. Second year into Kingsley's plan, I think, they're going to take serious strides because they're pretty hard to play at the Giants Stadium as well.
They are. I think they had a pretty good record there, especially in the back half of the year. But things with the Giants, not just about Giants Stadium. They won at 9 different venues last year.
Anytime. Yeah.
Nick, can you tell me the 9 different venues, the top of your head?
It wasn't the MCG on Freeling,
though. They won one. They beat the Saints at the GNF final. But they won at Giants Stadium. They won at the SCG. They won at Traeger Park.
In Alice Springs,
They won on Mars. Yeah. They won in Tassie as well. They won at Marvel. I mean, how is this team so good at traveling all over the place? And one in Canberra, of course, as well. It's a really much as similar to the 2012-13 Swans, anytime, anywhere. That is the motto of the Giants now.
It is, and it's symbolic of good culture, really disciplined and tight team. Like they know how to, they know how each other works and their system works.
And also, Aaron Cadman, #1 draft pick a year ago. He was I think he kicked 4 goals in the practice match, played as a second ruck as well, was very good in the BFL on the back end of last year. Just some natural progression from Aaron Cadman could take him to even another level offensively. What do you see the Giants finishing this year, Nick?
I've got him top 6.
Yeah, I got him top 4.
Yeah. I reckon they're going to make a serious case of top 4.
And the thing is, last year, everyone was down on the Giants. We had them as the biggest improvers. So we know a little bit about football on this show. I mean, we're not going to talk about all the incorrect predictions last year, but the Giants were very good last season. Nick, let's move on.
Das, we're heading down west in Victoria. Geelong, Cats.
Oh,
big question marks this year. And I tipped them for the flag last year. But I did that. So disclaimer, I did that because I thought starting a podcast and tipping Collingwood to win the flag that same year would look a little bit sus. So, I wasn't tipping.
After round 4, you said every week, though.
Correct. I rode that way. No, finished 12th last year with, it really was a lackluster year for them. They lost games that they shouldn't have lost. They lost games at home.
Started slow and never got going. I think they started 0-3. I think they might have belted the Hawks when they were 0-3. But
lost to the Suns?
Yes, the Suns lost as well, and the Suns were struggling at the time as well. It's just, I think the impact of Joel Selwood's retirement early on in the year, they never really recovered from that. I don't know how their midfield's going to perform this year, Nick. What do you see that happens to their list?
Look, I think no notable ins this year, but they did lose a Sava who sort of did struggle to crack back into that full back line, once again, like he had every other year. So the thing is, though, I think they're a proud club. We've seen over the last 15 years. If you look at it purely statistically, they are the best team in the competition because they always back up top 4 finish after top 4 finish. They always back up with finals. They've made how many grand finals since 2007? So I think over the last 15, 16 years, if you just look at the stats, they are the most successful team. Will they miss finals 2 years in a row? I don't think so. I think they're going to find a way to sneak into the 8 this year.
Well, they've got 9 games at GMHBA, and I think that is a big thing to mention because last year, the average attendance was at GMHBA?
Half of what?
21,000. Yeah. Now, that stadium fits 40,000 with the opening of the Joel Selwood stand, so they should have 40,000 people for their primetime game against the Saints in round 1. You get more for your 7th, 6th in the Collingwood intra-club game. But it's a true home ground advantage at GMHBA. How often have we said that is the hardest road trip in footy going down to Geelong? Last year it was not. No. A lot of teams won down in Geelong. If they can get that back, then they should be around the I think on the peripheral edges of the 8. I don't know if they're a lock for the finals just yet. Because as we saw the second half of last year, what was something that really affected them? It was Jeremy Cameron's loss of form. So if Jeremy Cameron isn't playing like the best player in the comp, they're really going to struggle to win a lot of games. I mean, they kicked, 7 against you? I mean, 3 of them were out of bounds. But unless he plays at that level, then they don't have that many elite players anymore.
Well, I think their back line was so unsettled, which was uncharacteristic. Tom Stewart got out early in the year. I think at stages... the tall fellow, De Koning as well, was also just in and out of the side, battling through injury.
And just to mention the tall thing, Blitzars ripped his hammy terribly in the back end of the year. And I'm a big Blitzars fan as well. He's so versatile to what they do. So I understand what you're saying. I think Hawkins struggle with injuries as well. So unless their talls and their bigs are all healthy, they're not quite as dominant. But if they're all got their ducks in a row, and Hawkins, Cameron, Blitzars, De Koning, Stewart, they're all up healthy and running, they're a different beast. I understand that. You've got them making the 8. I've got them just missing the 8. Move on. Now, this is an interesting one. The Gold Coast Suns, one of the biggest stories of this season. They came 15th last year. They finished 9-14. They sacked their coach in Stewie Jew halfway through the year. Big ins and outs. No real big ins and outs in terms of trades, but they had a massive, massive draft hand. They added Jed Walter with a pick 2 in the draft.
Pick 3, I think it was.
Pick 3.
Yeah. Either way, it was
we sat right here and Scott Lucas told us he could have been pick 1 in that draft. He is good as Harley Reid. They also added, Ethan Reid was the young ruckman, and Jake Rogers from their academy. A lot of good young players. I don't think that'll help them right now, but I do feel Gold Coast list is set up to be quite good right now.
Yep.
Rao, Anderson, Miller, King, Witts, they've got mature players in crucial positions. Where do you see the Suns landing in 2024?
Well, I think definitely going to improve. I just don't think they're going to make finals yet. I think it's going to take a bit of time.
They have the easiest draw in the league, according to some.
How easy?
Well, I mean, they're the Gold Coast Suns, so it's not that easy, but they play a lot of the bottom teams from this year. They've got favourable home games. They've got Damien Hardwick, one of the best coaches in the league.
Yeah, but it takes time. I think having Dimmer, definitely they're going to improve, but will they turn that, into they were 9-14 last year. Are they going to all of a sudden win 5 more games than they did last year in one season? It's a big jump. That's going almost 150%.
I agree with you.
50%.
I agree with you. My question would be is how good they're going to be at home, because a lot of the time you see a half-empty stadium up at Mount and Metricon.
It's a soulless stadium.
There's no real atmosphere.
No.
Now, you've been there. I've never actually been there. It seems like a good place to watch the footy, but it doesn't feel like they've got a good supporter base, at least that attends the games.
I mean, to be honest, all the supporters there are just, ex-Victorian sort of club supporters, but they live in Gold Coast, so of course they're going to support their local team. So there isn't that real vibe. But I've got to say, though, the academy in Queensland is quite strong because there's big raps on these youngsters that have come through the academy, like Jed Walter, Jake Rogers as well. So they're doing it right at grassroots level. But the big question is, how quickly can Dimmer make them relevant?
That is the question. I think it took Damien Hardwick, 7 years to play finals at Richmond, at least to win a final. It does take a bit of time. I'm still stuck on this one. I'll come back to you next week where they're actually going to play finals. I think they'll improve a fair bit because
they
15th is a pretty sorry finishing position. Yeah. They've got too much talent, too much top-end talent list in their midfield running through there. Actually, Bailey Humphrey, we haven't mentioned.
Jack Lukosius. Can he string it every single week? If he can, no worries. You know? But is he going to do it every 3 weeks?
Yeah.
Because that's not going to net you finals.
I know. He can do it for 3 weeks in a row and then go missing for 5 weeks. I've got Gold Coast probably just missing the 8. We'll address it more on next week's show.
Yes, next one we have is Hawthorn. bit of a surprise packet because we know they're so capable of taking down some big names, no matter where they are positioned in the ladder in any season. 16th last year, record of 7-16 with a measly 80%. Now look at their trades. Look, they brought in Marbio Chol from Gold Coast. They got Jack Ginnivan as well. And look, Nick Watson, big raps in this young
the
kid.
wizard.
You're a wizard, Harry.
Pick 5. So I think definitely improved their forward line. Jack Unson returns as well, after a 1 year little stint. Now they've lost, only noticeable outs really is Tyler Brockman to West Coast. Everyone else is probably on the outer there getting delisted and traded and whatnot. So, look, I still feel though they are so James Sicily dependent. Like if he plays well, they're a chance of winning. If Sicily is blanketed, you probably got no shot.
That's the thing. If Sicily was tagged or not playing last year, they really struggled to win games. I think he missed maybe 3 or 4 games from the Hugh McCluggage tackle, and it was a free kick at the time. He ended up getting 3 weeks for it.
On the ball.
It probably was holding the ball, and they really couldn't win games after that. I think they're so dependent, as you said, on James Sicily, but I do think their forward line has improved this offseason by getting Jack Ginnivan, getting Nick the Wizard Watson. It gives them a bit more versatility. Now, look at those 3 mosquitoes of Bruce, Ginnivan and Watson. Those rival anyone else in the league.
Dylan Moore as well.
Absolutely. Dylan Moore's a fantastic player. Dealing with glandular fever at the moment. Hopefully he'll be there for round 1. Hopefully not actually doesn't play against us in round 2. Hopefully he's back. But they've now got a more diverse forward line. And I love their midfield when they're up and running. Jai Newcomb, Will Day. They've got a lot of good young players running through. Even James Warple from time to time. They have a good mix in there. But I don't know whether they've got just quite enough to compete with the best teams. Similar to last year, they might start slow and finish strong.
Yeah, so that's the reason why I have them sort of marooned to that bottom 4 this year is the back line. I mean, they're full back. You've got Sam Frost again, playing key back.
Really hurts playing tearing his ACL.
DGB, Denver Granger Barras.
Well, he's out for 10 to 12 weeks.
Can't get in the park. Yeah. And that's a top 6 pick. So
Giath has done his hamstring again as well. So it's more not even that the players aren't good enough. They've got a massive injury crisis right now, the Hawks.
Not to mention as well, was it Blank who just did his knee? So he's going to miss 12 months. So massive outs. When we saw some improvement and signs, then they've taken some serious injuries already before we've even played a single game. So look, I think they'll improve as a club, but the win-loss record probably isn't going to improve that much. So that's why I have them bottom 4.
No, the likes of Chol and Massimo D'Ambrosio, they're coming in and they'll help with their depth, but I don't think they'll actually improve the wins of the club. Hi everyone, I hope you're enjoying Season 2 of the Time On podcast. It is so good to be back. I was thinking before what I love most, and it's probably podcasting, but a close second would be watching football for 10 straight hours surrounded by 100 screens on a Saturday. And I love to do it with my family and my friends over a few beers, a few ice cold pots, and maybe a Palmer or 2 or 3. And the best place to experience this is at the Orrong Hotel, the very first sponsor of the Time On podcast. With over 150 years of history, the Orrong is the place to be for any sports lover or someone looking for a delicious menu full of all your pub classics. There are plenty of fantastic special offers throughout the week, so don't miss out. Head on down to the Orrong Hotel, located on High Street, Armidale, Melbourne. Moving on, Nick. It is the Melbourne Football Club. They came 4th in the home and away ladder last season, defeated by the Pies in the first final, and then they went out straight set, didn't they? What was that joke Dan Gorringe said? What's your favourite thing to boil? Is it to cook? Was it finals on the MCG to Christian Petrarca?
What's your favourite thing to cook? You got your Mexican, your Italian, your Indian, you got finals at the G?
No, unfortunately for the Melbourne fans, they didn't have a good end of the year last year, but they came 16-7.
Well, they haven't won a final at the G since 2018.
I know, it's crazy to think. Those fans, they're
starved.
They saw that grand final from their couches.
We're in lockdown. Yeah.
Exactly. It's a tough time sometimes for Melbourne fans because your team can play so well, but you don't get to enjoy it in person.
How's their list looking?
Well, I still think their list looks okay. I mean, they lost Brodie Grundy, who's probably their biggest out for this offseason. They lost James Harms as well. They added Jack Billings from the St Kilda Football Club, Shane McCannon from Adelaide, and Caleb Windsor, the number 7 pick in the draft, which came via the Luke Jackson trade.
Big raps on him as well.
Absolutely. He looks like a very young, good flying wingman. But can they get better than last year is the big question, especially with all the off-season headlines which have dominated this club. Joel Smith, Clay Nolan, it seems like every single day there's something new going wrong with Melbourne. But just at face value, Nick, looking at their list, it seems like one of the best 4 lists in the comp still.
Yeah, at face value, yes, the list is great. The thing is, though, 2 years going with the same game plan and same list, falling short in those 4 finals, and they were pretty agonisingly short as well.
Yeah.
So I think they're going to take a backward step this year. I think they're going to struggle to make finals.
Really?
They'll definitely. They won't be in the top 4. I think I have them finishing, honestly, anywhere between 5th to 10th.
Now, this is the team, despite all their struggles last year, had the best defense.
Yeah.
I mean, you had Carlton, St Kilda, yourself, and Melbourne, probably the 4 best defenses last year. Do you see that just falling away there? Because Clayton Oliver doesn't affect that much.
No, I'm telling you, I think all it takes is one Stephen May or one Jake Lever injury, and that thing crumbles. Because Clayton Oliver, yes, he's not the make or break. He's not the glue to that team. He will top them up to take them to that next level. But I think Jake Lever and May are so important. I think all it takes is one of them to miss a game, and they are done.
You're becoming Doc Larkins on this show now, calling in injuries for players. You don't know they're going to get injured.
No, that's right. What I'm saying is that I think there's serious troubles, and I think the fatigue of going into another final series, another season after some devastating finals losses. I don't know if the belief's there in the club. So with the players. There's a lot of noise. There's a lot of noise.
I just keep thinking that even throughout the period where they weren't winning, we knew how good their top end talent was. May, Lever, Gorn, Petrarca, Oliver. They're all on the park. It's a top end talent which rivals any side.
But how often does a team, continually make top 4? Like, honestly, going more than 3 years is pretty rare. So they've done it 21, done it 22, done it 23. We're asking them now for a 4th time to make, top 4. It is pretty rare.
I think Geelong and Richmond, maybe in the last sort of 10 years, they were consistently in the top 4. But it's true, there has to come a point where they're no longer able to contend at that level. Gorn has gotten older. That's probably the big question mark for me. It's not just Clayton Oliver, because I think he will play, he will return. It's what happens if Max Gorn goes down. There's nothing behind him. Tom Fulton is recruited as the backup ruckman from Brisbane. I think they've got a young ruckman coming through the VFL ranks. But if Max Gorn was to miss 8 weeks, I could see them missing the finals. That's how crucial he is to their season. Nick, we'll move on to the next team.
Yes, so we've got North Melbourne here. A very interesting year ahead of them. Now they get Alistair Clarkson for a full year. I mean, let's not take this lightly. They were severely impacted with all the sagas going on last year. He obviously had to take a step away from the game. They get Alistair Clarkson, full preseason, drafting kids, full season ahead for them. So, look, finished 17th, 3-20, did win that last game of the year against
Started 2-0.
They pumped them. Yeah, that's right. Let's look at their ins. Let's look at their ins. Nothing too crazy, but they got Zach Fisher for barely anything from Carlton. Dylan Stevens, top 10 pick, wasn't he? So
top 5 pick.
Top 5 pick from Sydney, which cost them nothing. And their outs, I mean, look, these guys are probably on the way out. You got Cunnington retired, Goldstein, who's into his mid-30s
He's the best player.
Aaron Hall, and then Ben Mackay, obviously, going to Essendon, and Jack Siebel as well. So, look, it's a changing of the guard. Don't get me wrong, but I think North will improve in the sense that they'll become more relevant and stay longer in games. I think their win-loss, though, isn't going to improve that much.
So you don't believe in North Ball, as they're calling it, similar to Bazball they have the English cricket team, which actually ruined them, by the way. They're getting flogged by India over in India. They haven't won anything since they brought Bazball in, but North Ball is coming. It's flying halfback. It's McKershaw. It's Sheasel. It's Zach Fisher. It's taking the game on. I mean, it looks beautiful in a practice match. And the thing is, North got a lot of excitement. They do. Wardlaw, LDU. I mean, their midfield is coming on, and it's going to be here to be messed with in a couple of years' time. But I agree, natural improvement and progression can be a couple more wins, but it doesn't necessarily mean they're going to contend for the top 8.
I still have them in the bottom 4, but I think they
still got them in the bottom 4.
Definitely.
Okay.
Yes.
I mean, there's a lot of teams that are probably competing at a higher level than them right now. Who do you see having natural improvement from them? Who are you excited to watch from North? Because so many years are like, God, I don't even want to watch North. They're going to lose by 100 points.
No, I'm excited to see Wardlaw. I think that game against Essendon late in last year, he sort of took you guys apart.
He looked like a madman.
Yeah.
I know. It was actually frightening that this young 18-year-old was taking apart our midfield comprising 2 to 3 All-Australians, but he looks like an absolute star of the future, young Wardlaw. Nick, we'll move on. Oh, by the way, I've got North coming outside the top 4, but not that far.
Top 4?
Yes, they will come outside the top 4, outside the bottom 4, sorry, Nick, and they will lose Essendon once again like they have the last 8 years. We'll move on to the Port Adelaide Football Club. There last year, they came 3rd in the home and away ladder, but they were out in straight sets. They had a 17-6 home and away record, but there were some big ins and outs for the Port Adelaide Football Club, Nick. Asaba Radagalia was traded from the Geelong Football Club to play a key position role. Ivan Soldo, Ivan Soldo, don't call him Ivan. Remember Danny Frawley called him Ivan once, and he actually front up said it's actually Ivan Soldo, actually Danny Frawley. It's like who are you? You know, he's like, I'm actually got a premiership player, unlike you, Danny. So Ivan Soldo from the Richmond Football Club, Jordan Sweet from the Western Bulldogs Football Club. Both of them hopefully will take the #1 ruck role. Xavier Walsh, don't know him, rookie draft. Brandon Zerk-Thatcher from the Essendon Football Club will be recruited to play a key position back role out. Xavier Dersma, obviously, to Essendon, and Orazio Fantasia was delisted. Nick, big ins and outs, I feel, were the key backs. How do you see a Sava Radigalea and Brandon Zerk-Thatcher fitting in at Port Adelaide?
Yeah, they've addressed their needs really well this off-season. Tom Jonas retired. He probably couldn't even get on the park, really, towards the end of the last year. They needed a big body down there, so they've got a Sava, tick. They needed another intercept defender, they got BZT, tick. I think they're two really good acquisitions. And the thing is, what happened with Port last year? I mean, they started so well. They were playing so well under Ken, and then they got a few injuries, probably after that goal after the siren with Houston. I'd say,
shut up.
I'd say after that point in time, they started losing a couple men, every week, and then they were just battered. So by the time they got to finals, they were absolutely ruined and cooked. And then, they were convincingly beaten both games.
It's interesting you say that. So I think their last 6 weeks, they really struggled to get any sort of form together, and they lost out in straight sets. But how do you compare that to Collingwood's last 6 weeks, where they, I think, lost 3 of the last 5 games, but they were able to flick the switch, getting players healthy?
No, it's a good point, because we also lost some key players. I think we lost Darcy Moore, Jordan Ngoe, Bobby Hill, Dacos as well towards the end of the year. Oh, yeah. We were able, like you said, we were able to flick the switch. I don't think we were that far off the mark, though, those times.
I'm going to just the stats. I think you were pretty easy to score against once it went inside 50. Your contested numbers were well down as well. I don't know if Port's midfield really struggled, but obviously their key backs were getting victimised through the last 4 weeks. I think can they get back to what they did in the first half of the year? Because in the first half of the year, Nick, if you forget, they were neck and neck with you. They were beating everybody. It took you going over to Adelaide and beating them in a very close contest where you were... I think you were out there throwing beers, spitting on people. Because you were at that game, weren't you?
No, that was Adelaide.
Oh, that was Adelaide. Sorry, that was a different Adelaide game where you were abusing opposition fans.
Another famous win by 1 point.
No, but they were neck and neck with you for probably half the year. But then once that loss happened against you, I feel like a little bit of luster fell out of their ass.
It did. And I think they just lost it at the contest. So I want to see, big question marks, Ollie Wines. Can he return to anywhere near his best? And another one, I mean, Jason Horne-Francis, he had a pretty good year last year.
Yeah, he did.
He's going to be, his third year into the system.
Statistically, it wasn't great. Had a lot of big moments.
But that's the thing. I don't think he'll ever be that player. He'll just, whatever, he might have 20 touches, but that's all he needs. And he might impact the game that way. So, another preseason to see him, a former number 1 draft pick, could take him to that next level. Look, I see them being around the mark. I think they're going to be pushing for top 4. I think between 4 to 6.
I agree. I think they'll be between 4 and 6. We know how good that midfield is, Nick. Connor Rosie, Zach Butters, Horne-Francis, Ollie Wines. It's probably as good as any midfield in the competition. Can they put it together for the entire season and the finals? That is the big question going into 2024. Move on, Nick, to the Richmond Football Club.
Yes, Richmond had a pretty disappointing season last year, finishing 13th, measly 94%. It was a bit of a changing of the guard as well. I mean, they copped injury after injuries towards the start of the season as well. You had Tom Lynch going out really early.
My Coleman pick.
It was done. So, look, let's look at the earnings. Nothing crazy. Jacob Skazitsky from Hawthorn could barely get a game. Sam Naismith, delisted free agent. I mean, have a look at their outs. You got Trent Cotchin, legend of the club. Jack Rewalt, legend of the club. You got Robbie Tarrant, who was handy deaf down back, couldn't really get on the park. And then Ivan Soldo as well, another ruckman. So on face value, their team's it's definitely worse this season on paper, but it's a changing of the guard. So they're going to play those young guys and they're going to get games into guys like Josh Gibcus.
Yeah, I agree. Well, Josh Gibbs has missed the entire season last year after having a really impressive start to his career in 2022. I just don't see them really being able to compete with the big boys this year. I know their midfield got better last year by adding Taranto and Hopper, but now that was the need they need to address. But now it's all the other parts of the ground.
It's the forward line, the back line.
Because Rewalt, even though he was in the last legs last year, he was the number 1 forward for them, and he was pretty much their only avenue to goal that you could rely on. Shea Bolton, Dusty Martin, they're rolling through the midfield a fair bit as well. I just don't see them having enough at either end of the ground. I think their midfield will be okay with Hopper and Taranto, and I think they're signalling that Dusty will play a bit more midfield this year in addition to Bolton and might play a bit more forward. But I don't have much belief in a team that has an aging list, has lost their greatest coach of all time, and looks destined for a bit of a rebuild.
Yeah, I've got them bottom 4. Look, Adam Uze, I think can coach. Is from all accounts in the levels below AFL. So it's a retool year for him, and it's a serious change in the guard. You're losing 2 club legends in Rewalt and Cotchin. That's a massive change. So I think bottom 4 for Richmond.
Absolutely, I agree. And also, I want to mention, I think Noah Bolter will play forward this year. So he looked all right as a defender in the previous years. He's now been flipped to the forward. I agree.
I don't like that. Just keep him down back. He's a gun backman.
Well, I think with Rewalt gone, they're going to play Kaczynski maybe as their forward. And who's their other forward I'm missing, Nick? They'll have Kaczynski, and they'll have Tom Lynch. Obviously, that's if Tom Lynch plays early in the year. Do you need Bolter in there as well?
Well, is he a midfielder or is he a forward line? Like, they got to make the decisions. Is Dusty going to play pure forwards? Yes, most likely. So I don't know. I think they're going to struggle this year.
Just looking at this 22, Nick, they've got the best 22 on the AFL website. It doesn't give me a lot of confidence going into this season. We will move on, Nick, to this St Kilda Football Club. And they came 6th last year. They lost their first final to the G West Giants on the MCG. Now, no real big ins or outs, I must say. Liam Henry came in from the Fremantle Football Club, former top 10 pick. They lost Jade Gresham, former top 20 pick, and a very nice player for the Saints. But no real ins or outs that would move the needle. But I am big on the Saints. I think they're such a well-coached side. Got such a great defense. Best defense in the league last year. Callum Wilkie with his first All-Australian blazer in the back pocket. And the big question is, if Max King is healthy, he could kick 50-plus goals. You've got some good midfielders in Jack Steele, Brad Crouch, Jack Sinclair, All-Australian halfback. The names don't pop out to you as some incredible names, but as a unit, I'm quite confident in this group.
Yeah, and what excites me is the start of last season. How many outs did they have? They had a lot of significant outs.
Great point.
But remind me, how'd they start? They were one of the best teams in the comp.
Yeah, they were flogging teams.
Leading into gather round, they were second on the ladder. Collingwood took it right up to them, and they were so stingy as a defensive unit. So, coming into a full preseason with Ross Lyon, the ultimate leveler, he comes into that club pretty irrelevant. Now he's got them playing in some sort of, with some belief and some structure that they think, no, we're going to probably win more games than they're not.
I'm glad you mentioned that. It's belief. I don't think this club had belief under Richardson. Didn't have it under Scott Waters.
They haven't had it since Ross Lyon 1.0.
Yeah, they probably had it for half a season under Brett Radden. Now under Ross Lyon, they believe they could match pretty much anyone. It's not like they're going to kick 90 points in a game. They're going to choke the opposition to 70 or lower points, but still they're going to get the results. And they've done that multiple times over the last 12 months.
A few names I want to see this year: Marcus Winhager, Mitch Owens, and Nasiah.
Nasiah Wangan-Miller, he looked great last year. And also Matthias Philippou, who they've said is one of the absolute great trainers at the club. They've got some good young players coming through. We actually saw Mitch Owens a couple of weeks ago, didn't we?
We did. Yeah. He was actually such a nice bloke. I think I was so caught up with the stardom and fangirling when I took the picture with Q. And then he came to me.
Who took the picture with Q?
I'm like, Das, I saw Q. He's like, I took the photo.
You're actually in your own galaxy when IQ showed up.
Shows you what level I was at. But Mitch Owens taps me on the shoulder, goes, "How you going, mate?" I'm like, "Oh fuck, all right." You're a nice bloke.
Actually, you're a pretty good player. I didn't even recognise you.
All right, I'll put my Sharpie away.
So where do you have the Saints coming this year?
I think top 6. Yeah.
Top 6? Yeah, I've got them playing finals once again. We'll move on, Nick.
Yes, let's move on to Sydney Swans. Pretty fascinating team this year because finished 8th. Very, very lucky to make finals last year, penning that non-goal review, call it. 12 wins, 10 losses, and a draw. Look, they've got some pretty big ins. Taylor Adams, Brodie Grundy. You take that to the bank. James Jordan as well as a free agent from Melbourne.
Pretty much nothing for those players
That's
as well.
right. And really, their outs, nothing really noticeable. The only thing I can say, Lance Franklin, yes, is retired, but I think they prepared for life without Buddy, throughout various stages last year.
Absolutely. I mean, last year...
For the last few years, really.
Yes. I mean, Buddy had that brilliant bounce-back year in 2022. Yeah. But last year, they kind of knew he was at the end. I think he retired with pretty much 8 rounds left because his quad was cooked. But really, since COVID, they knew we're going to get life after Buddy. It's going to be Logan McDonald. It's going to be... who's the young ruckman? I've forgotten his name right now.
It is...
Let's just scroll down to the Sydney's list. Obviously, you've got Joel Amadi.
McLean.
Hayden McLean. He actually was good last year. I saw him take some big grabs, kick a good set shot or two. I think their list is in a decent spot, but a couple of question marks have emerged in the last couple of weeks. Callum Mills obviously going to miss the first half of the year, and the news coming in today, Nick, Luke Parker has broken his arm. Now, I don't have the exact timeline on it. Will miss round 1. Could be a bit longer than that. Looks to me like a 4 to 6 week injury. He had 75% of CBAs attended last year. He was still the number 1 midfielder. I mean, in terms of on-ball role, I mean, Errol Goulden is a superstar in his own right, but he wasn't playing inside mid. This could be a big, big injury for Sydney, especially early in the year to lose Luke Parker.
I think we forget, though, last year was a bit of an anomaly because they made the SCG so difficult to play on. Like, it was such a home ground advantage, I think, but for last season. Teams sort of worked them out, bit of personnel issues. So, no, I expect Sydney to bounce back this year in 2024, make the SCG a genuine fortress again, and I have them sneaking to the 8.
Okay, I've got him in the 8 as well. I mean, if they get Mills and Parker back and they're still around the 8, I think they'll be absolutely fine. I'm glad you mentioned the perimeter, or at least the dimensions of the SCG, because that'll help Brody Grundy. Because he's a guy that loves to go stoppage to stoppage. Not only like a big kicker of the football, but he can get a lot of tackles, get in tight. He's great with picking the ball up off the ground. I think Grundy will have a nice year for the Swans. How do you see Grundy going in Sydney?
I think really well. Like, he's going to partner well with their midfielders. They got so many good contested ball winners in that team. The thing is, though, for Sydney to take the next level, like, it's the likes of Isaac Heaney has to be, an all-Australian type. It's the likes of Hayden McLean having to, probably kick 30-plus goals and holding down a centre-half forward team. It's, Joel Amadi.
I'd say someone like Braden Campbell, who's a former top 10 pick out on a wing this year. Even Nick Blakey, who we've seen is developing into a really good player. Can he go to another level? Can he be an all-Australian level player?
I think he can. I think Nick Blakey is the one this year that takes his game, just like Errol Goulden did last year. And also, James Rowbottom, all these guys, they're sort of around the mark. Will Hayward, we know they can play, and Logan McDonald, it's going to be his 4th year in the system, I think.
Yes, also out of contract end of this season, one to monitor. Big Pies fan as a kid.
Massive Collingwood fan growing up.
I think you've linked the Pies to just about every key forward of the last decade. Even before that, there was Jonathan Brown, there's Nick Rewalt. Now it's Logan McDonald, Aaron Norton. The list just goes on
Corey
and on.
Galt.
Corey Galt. Now, we've both got the Swans making the finals this year. We'll move on to the next team, Nick. We've got 2 sides left. Jeez. Do you really want to talk about this side?
30 seconds on this one?
We'll go tight on this one because I think everything's already been said about this club. It is the West Coast Eagles, Nick.
Jesus. I think it's going to get worse before it gets a bit better.
Yeah, I agree.
And can it? So 18th, 3 wins, 20 losses, 53%. Looking at their lists, I mean, no noticeable ins there. I know they got the number 1 draft pick, but we've said it that many times.
Harley Reid obviously is a big in. I didn't mind the addition of Tyler Brockman as well. It'd be a good pickup. But Matt Flynn, he just torn his tendon in in training, Nick. Things just keep going from bad to worse for this side.
Yeah, we know a bit of an aging list. Shannon Hearn retiring, Nick Nananui and Luke Shuey. Look, these guys could not get on the park generally. So, I think they're going to have a rough year. The thing is, the shining stars. Tom Barras playing fullback. If he can just keep
him back,
that's right. Jeremy McGovern, can he stay on the park because he's barely been able to do that? Elliot Yeo, can he return? Andrew Gaff.
Yeo's had a great preseason. He's been as healthy as he's been for 3 years. But how long will that last?
How many times
will that last? Yeah. Well, remember last year in Supercoach, we had Elliot Yeo. We hadn't actually seen him for like 3 years. He was kind of like, he was Bigfoot or he was a Yeti. He's like, Elliot Yeo, what a great player he is. Have you actually seen him play in the last year? No. Oh, he's not fit for round 1.
No, all he did was torch us in 2018 grand final. But that's all right.
What do you have him finishing next?
Last.
It's hard to say they're not going to come last because what West Coast record is since they beat you at Marvel Stadium in 2022?
What?
37 losses, 4 wins.
Jesus.
They beat you in 2022 when you made a preliminary final that year, lost by 1 point to the Swans.
Yes.
They then lost 16 in the next 17 games. You know who the only win was against?
North?
Essendon. We will move on to the Western Bulldogs. They came 9th last year. They should have made the finals. They finished 12 and 11. Obviously, they lost those 2 crucial games at the back end of the year to Hawthorn and the West Coast Eagles. Big ins and outs. Nothing really to speak of, I think, Nick. Nick Caulfield, former top 10 pick, comes and joins the Western Bulldogs. Riley Sanders was picked 6 in the draft. Could be a very handy pickup. James Harms, obviously premiership player at the Melbourne Football Club. They lost Josh Bruce to retirement after another knee injury. Hopefully doing well in retirement. Brucey, Mitch Hannon delisted, Toby McLean delisted. Bit of a clean out of some of those peripheral plays at the Dogs. Nick, this is a team that we know has as much talent as any side in the competition. So many good young, tall players. Those are the guys that every club wants, but they're so hard to place because we know there's issues in terms of their game plan, in terms of the coaching. It's whether other players can step up to provide support to the best player in the league in Marcus Bonham-Pelly. Where do you have the Dogs finishing in 2024?
So the Dogs are probably the most fascinating team to speculate in season 2024. Honestly, it can go either way. It's can they scrape into the top 4 or do they finish 12th and Bevo gets sacked halfway through the year? I honestly think it goes one of 2 ways. And the thing is, I think it's the latter.
You think it's going to go downhill?
I think it goes downhill for the Dogs. I don't know why, but the thing I don't like is the uncertainty in some coaching moves. When I see key backs getting flipped into key forward roles or the other way around. So Aaron Norton, for example, why do we not know his best position yet? Why does that keep changing every 3 or 4 weeks? I don't believe Bevo has that certainty in him yet. I don't think they have that belief in them. I think the Doggies going into most games thinking, I don't know if we can
It's
win
a coin flip game.
Yeah.
And that's That's staggering to think when you have the best player in the league. And you've got two capable key forwards in Aaron Norton and Jamari Will-Hagel.
Let's look at their top talents. You got Bont, right? He's probably the best player in the league. You got Tim English, one of the best ruckmen in the league. You got Tom Liberatore, who's probably one of the best in and under in the league. Like we're saying top 5 in their capers
per
right?
game. No one is good at clearances and contested possessions than Tom Liberatore.
So you got Jamara as well, who's an up-and-coming, star gun forward. Bailey Smith, yes, he's out for the injury. Can't really count him. Katie Waitman is probably one of the best small forwards.
He is.
He'd say he's in the top 10.
The question is, can these guys play well against good teams? Because we've seen them beat up on bad teams so often. Can Ugle-Hagen, Norton, and Cody Waitman match it against the Pies, against Brisbane? Because we haven't seen that in the last 12 months.
The depth's not there. And the back line, Liam Jones holding
What's the
key
thing,
back,
though?
Alex
They were
Keith.
the 5th best defense last year. Liam Jones is one of the best key backs in the league, but I don't know if they're going to replicate that this year.
Do they have enough guns off half back to generate forward, swings and momentum? Like, I don't know, Ed Richards shows promise. Caleb Daniel, he goes in and out of games now. I feel like every month.
I feel that's not all his fault, though. I think
He plays out of position.
Bevo throws him around. He loves to throw those magnets
Actually,
around.
and one more player we want to talk about is Jackson McRae. I mean, he always gets played out of position. I feel like Doggy supporters would genuinely be pulling out their hair at some of the positional changes.
Well, they've kind of moved him around, especially in the last 12 months. Jackson McRae, similar to Tom Mitchell, is one of the best see ball, get ball players I've ever seen. He is a brilliant accumulator.
Sorry, it's Jack McRae, not Jackson.
Well, people call it Jackson is the actual name, but
Oh, it is?
it
Oh,
is
sorry.
Jackson McRae, but people call him Jack McRae. I think he might have changed his name by deed poll. But Jack McRae is a fantastic player. But as you can see on this list here, he played on the wing, played half forward, he's played out of his natural position. Bevo he loves to move the magnets around. That's my question. Will he be at the end of the year, and will he be able to lift this team out of the bottom rungs of the ladder when they should be in the top 4?
Yeah, I've got him finishing literally 9th to 12th, just outside the 8. But what was that said about Bevo?
Bevo is the most successful coach in Western Bulldogs history.
That is fascinating.
No one's won more games or been in more finals appearances or won more finals than him.
That is genuinely fascinating because we're talking about a coach who is always under so much pressure going into the year. But if he doesn't win 2016, he probably doesn't last to 2021. And let's get serious, they're probably a little bit lucky to win 2016. Now, if they don't make the 2021...
We'll talk to Dan Hanbury about that.
We will. We might have to. 2021 grand final, if they don't make that, they finished, 7th that year, didn't they? So if they don't make that dream run in a COVID year, probably doesn't last until 2024. So he's just found a way somehow.
He's the hardest coach to place because without that run, you would consider his career post-grand final to be an abject failure in 2016. But he had that one run, and that's so much more than pretty much 80% of the other clubs.
That's right. It holds so much weight.
What are the other doggies finishing in 2024, Nick?
9th to 12th.
9th to 12th. I think they'll go back to the top 8.
Back in.
And I think Bont will win the Brownlow. I think they're overdue. Bont has been the best player in the league, in my opinion, for probably
What's a Brownlow?
2 to 3. I know the Brownlow doesn't mean everything, but when you're that good, you'll lift your team to win games.
See, look, no, I understand that, but I think this shouldn't be the year Bont has to have the amazing year. It's got to be the other guys. The
Which
bottom
guys are you
six, the
talking
bottom
about?
12. Jason Johansson coming to form. It's Adam Treloar having a career best year. It's Aaron Norton kicking 45, 50 goals. It's Liam Jones and Alex Keith forming some sort of formidable partnership like Callum Wilkie and
Wilkie and Battle.
And Battle did for the Saints. I don't think that's going to happen.
It's a hard one. I like some of those younger players like Ed Richards, James O'Donnell. They've got good young players coming through as well.
The list is good.
Yeah. So you're questioning the coach once again.
Yeah, I'm just wondering how it all works.
We will see, Nick. We will see. That is all 18 teams previewed and predicted for the 2024 season. Woof. Got through it all, Nick. We're about bang on an hour there as well. Well, a bit of content there for episode 2 of season 2. Hope you all enjoyed that. Now, Nick, just to finish things off with the Time On podcast for another week, what is coming up on this show in the upcoming weeks? We've got a couple of interviews scheduled, don't we?
Yes, we do. Is it time to announce it?
I think it is time to announce it.
Yeah, ladies and gentlemen, we've got Premiership superstar, former Sydney Swans and St Kilda player Dan Hanbury joining us in the studio.
Wow, round of applause for Dan Hanbury. He's not here right now, but that is a big, big get for the Time On podcast.
Sure he's listening. No, thank you, Paul Jones. Thank you. Love your work for helping us set that up. So, yeah, former AFLCA
Champion Player of the Year. There was like a 3-4 year run where Hannah's was as good as any midfielder in the league.
Hannah's was an exceptional player. I remember watching us play against him. I'm thinking I would love him to be in our centre square.
I would have loved him in Essendon. I mean, in that period where we had Joe Watson, Brendan Goddard, even Paul Chapman, I think Hannah's a brilliant runner because Hannah's one of those great gut runners who just gets from contest to contest. Actually a good user of the football
Great
and
finisher.
kick goals. I mean, didn't win any Brownlows or he didn't win any MVPs, but he was in that top echelon of players.
No, he was. So that's going to be very, very
Cannot
exciting.
wait to have Hannah's on the show. Anything else we've got coming up, Nick?
Yeah, I was going to say we've got a fair bit of footy coming up with the practice games, the JLT Community Series. It's JLT or was it Amy?
I think it's Amy now. I think it's JLT. I think you're stuck in the Buckley days there.
Yeah, Buckley era. And a bit of a reveal for overs, unders.
Oh yes, they went so well last year, didn't they? I think my lock of the year was St Kilda under, and then I think they actually went over by about round 2.
We'll be redeeming ourselves this year, trust me.
We'll do ladder predictions. We'll give our awards predictions as well next week, and maybe a little bit of a Supercoach preview. Just what our strategies are going to this year. I haven't checked with you. Are you good for the draft on Sunday night?
Absolutely not. Is that this Sunday?
Yeah, you can't draft.
What time's that?
Night time?
I can't draft. I've just had no prep.
Oh, I've done no prep either. That's fine. We're gonna make it a bit interesting. Okay, Sunday night we'll do our Supercoach draft. We've got a league of about 12 people. You going to be ready or not?
Yeah, I will be because
you're going to pick all Pies players, aren't you?
Yeah, well, pretty much. Well, I mean, I'll probably win.
Shut up. We'll do our Supercoach preview for Classic and Draft on next week's episode. And you know, the beautiful thing is, we'll have football. We'll be able to talk about opening round.
Yes.
Now, before we finish off the show, Nick, do you understand what opening round even is? Like, why do we have opening round?
It's to combat the NRL's opening round. That's
surely,
my understanding.
Surely we're not so petty that we're only worried about what Peter Volandis thinks.
So NRL goes to Vegas, we go to where NRL lives. That's my understanding of it. What a crazy philosophy.
I'm just so used to the MCG hosting the game. So Carlton, Richmond, but even before that, it used to be Collingwood, Richmond on a Friday night. That used to open the season.
Anthony Rocker 70 out.
Yes.
And lose by 40 traditionally. No, you know what? That aside, I think the curtain raiser should be the grand finalists. That should be the
it was, I think, maybe 3 years ago. We had Melbourne play the Dogs after they played in the grand final in 2021. But we haven't gone back to that. I agree. It should be that.
And whoever won the grand final gets to play their home ground.
Home ground.
You unfurl the flag. What's wrong with that?
Well, in the NBA, that's exactly what they do.
Well,
so
it makes sense.
So say the Golden State Warriors won the title. They might play the Lakers in the late game that evening, but they might play the Bucks and say the Celtics in the early game. So you have 2 games. Opening night, you play the best players in the world. You unfurl your banner or your flag. But instead, we've got Melbourne playing Sydney at the SCG for some reason. It doesn't make a lot of sense.
Dizzy stuff.
It is dizzy stuff, Nick. That is it for episode 2 of season 2 of the Time One Podcast. 36 overall. We are veterans of this game, Nicholas and I. Hope you all enjoyed it. If you're enjoying it on Spotify or Apple Podcasts, you hear us in your ears. If you're on YouTube, I'll have the YouTube show up later in the week. There'll be many, many mistakes and overlays of probably just Nathan Buckley and James Hurd doing weird shit in the mid-2000s. But that is it. Hope you all enjoyed it. We'll see you all next week.